Brantley decided he was not a jealous man. He was simply a man who respected patterns. Patterns told you everything. Patterns were what let him notice that the paper towel roll depleted faster on weekends, which meant Madeleine used it more when he was home, which in his mind meant she spilled more things when he was in the room, which meant she was either nervous around him or deeply clumsy, neither of which he wanted to be true. Patterns were what let him predict the elevator in their building would stick between floors on Thursdays, sulk on Fridays, and carry itself like a citizen the rest of the week. Patterns made the world a tidy ledger. Every entry had its place. He hadn't meant to see the text. The phone buzzed, the screen glowed, and he glanced the way you glance when a toaster pops. He didn't touch it. He didn't need to. The message hung there, vivid, upright, absolute. Can't wait to see you tonight. There was a heart emoji, a red one, not the neutral yellow that meant, I like your outfit, but I also respect boundaries. Red meant declarations. Red meant sirens. Brantley tried to breathe like the mindfulness app said, 4 seconds in, 4 seconds hold, 4 seconds out. On 4 seconds out, the phone buzzed again. A photo arrived, a shot of a black satin bow tie in a gift box, with a small silver card beside it reading, for later. The contact name was only initials, C.W. He did not know a C.W. He knew a Chetley, a Cole, a Casimir who did their accounting, and a woman at the front desk called Wren who'd rebranded herself that summer, but no C.W. His stomach made a sound like an elevator changing its mind. Madeleine breezed in smelling faintly of tangerine peel and printer paper. Traffic is chaos, she said, kissing the air near his cheek. Did you eat the last string cheese or did Boone? Boone, their black Labrador with eyes that looked like someone had plugged the sky into a socket and then dimmed it, lifted his head from his rug and offered a blink that could mean guilt, enlightenment, or a treaty. He lay back down with the slow discipline of a professional who had never once chased his own tail. Sometimes when Boone watched the hallway like a sniper watches a ridge, Brantley felt a prickle along his neck and thought, if the dog ever starts talking, I'm resigning first. I didn't eat it, Brantley said, the words coming out steady, as if nothing in the world had ever shaken. What's the plan tonight? Work thing, she said, pulling a sequined garment from a garment bag. It sighed like wind on a metal roof. The Gala for Children's Horizons, remember? Black tie, you were invited. You said you had your fantasy football draft and then scheduled it for next Tuesday by mistake, which is not an actual day. He dimly remembered teasing the calendar. He had dragged the event box to the right, saw it land on a box that said Tuesday, didn't check the date because Tuesdays didn't need dates, and somehow he had placed it outside the grid into a region the app called unscheduled, where social obligations go to die. I moved some things, he said. The phone buzzed again. He pretended it was the dishwasher, self-actualizing. Who's C.W.? She stepped into the dress and zipped up, transforming into a person who made strangers turn their heads quietly. Who's who? C.W. He held his face in a position that meant only mild curiosity. He was not a jealous man. He was a man who noticed monograms. Oh, she said, smile flickering. One of the donors. He's emceeing tonight. Carson something. Carson Wagner. She tugged on a pair of silver earrings shaped like commas, punctuation with attitude. I've told you about him, I think. Carson Wagner. Brantley typed the name into his brain and fattened it with irritation. He pictured a man whose hair had opinions. He heard himself say, and what exactly can't he wait to see? Madeleine paused, reading him like you read a recipe you don't fully trust. Who can't wait to see what? It's fine, Brantley said, not answering, which is a traditional way to answer. Nice dress. She watched him a beat longer, then exhaled. If you want to come, come. You hate these things. I don't hate charity, he said. I hate the self-congratulation per plate. That's called fundraising, as she said, dropping a lipstick into her clutch. There's a silent auction. Try not to buy a timeshare. He smiled as if he were the type to accidentally purchase a boat slip in Idaho. After she left the room, he drifted toward the phone as if the tile were a moving walkway. He was not the sort of man who checked his wife's messages. He was the sort of man who briefly updated a mental spreadsheet. The phone buzzed. He saw another message appear, this one from a number he didn't recognize, with a preview that said, "Make sure the lights are dimmed before she arrives." Boone made a low sound, not a growl, something like a bass note checking in. "Patterns," Brantley said to the air. "Patterns do not lie." By 7:30, he had built a plan from spare parts and stuck it together with duct tape. First, he would confirm. He opened his laptop and looked up the Gala page. The event listing said black tie, 8 p.m., Hotel Rahab Ballroom. He scrolled through photos from last year, everyone glossy with effort. He recognized Carson Wagner immediately, a man whose haircut looked expensive in a modest way, like the faucets at a luxury airport lounge. He wore a bow tie that knew the alphabet of knots. In one photo, Carson stood next to a woman with an easy smile and a posture that prioritized no one's nonsense. Linda Wagner, the caption read. He clicked on a link from a society column. It identified Linda as a lawyer who once sued an airline for calling pesto a mayonnaise variant. The article included a photo of the couple on a red carpet, smiling like two people who had made a pact to go home by 11. Brantley's mind did the thing it loved most. It connected dots with a highlighter and then added an exclamation mark. Madeleine had texts with Carson. Carson had a wife named Linda. The photo of the bow tie meant Carson had some intimacy with black tie situations. The phrase "for later" suggested staged anticipation. The message about dimming lights suggested mood engineering. The emoji suggested heat. He should not be blamed for the conclusion that spun itself like sugar into a hard candy. Madeleine was cheating, Carson was the sugar source, and the Gala would be the heat that set it. He found Linda's work email on the law firm website and typed with the soft fury of a man who believed he was behaving reasonably. "Hello, Linda. I'm Brantley, husband of Madeleine. I think we should talk before the Children's Horizons Gala tonight. It concerns your husband. Please call me." He left his number paced and tried to imagine the conversation that would follow if he did nothing and showed up alone, pointed at things, said, "Look." He was not a pointer. He was a presenter. There was a difference. Linda called him within 9 minutes. Her voice had the clean edge of someone who never forgot her own tote bag. "Is this the kind of talk where you insult my intelligence?" she said. "Or the kind where you pretend that you're doing me a favor?" "I'd prefer the kind where we align on facts," Brantley said, pleased with himself for saying a line. "I saw messages. I have reason to believe your husband, Carson, may be involved with your wife," Linda supplied, deadpan, as if completing a crossword clue. "Yes," he said. "Evidence?" "Texts," he said. "A photo of a bow tie." An emoji. "Was the bow tie already tied?" "What does that matter?" "It matters," she said, "because if your wife is cheating on you with my husband, he would not have sent her an untied bow tie. That's for photographs that suggest possibility. A tied bow tie means I am already prepared to be admired by a third party. Men have their little codes." "It was in a box," he said. "Hard to say." She made a sound that could have been a laugh or a sigh unenthused by its own existence. "So what's the plan, Brantley?" "We attend together," he said. "We share an understanding smile in the elevator. We enter the ballroom on each other's arm. We do not cause a scene. We let the scene cause itself." "You want to make a tableau," she said. "I want to make truth visible." "Well," she said, "I like shrimp cocktail." By 8:15, they were in a rideshare, sitting side by side like conspirators on a commemorative stamp. Linda wore a black dress that had no interest in competing with anyone. She carried a tiny handbag that looked like it could file its own taxes. "If we're doing this," she said, "we don't whisper each other's names too loudly. Our goal is to be seen, not heard." "I believe," Brantley said, "our goal is to expose our cheating spouses." "My spouse is fine, and my marriage is fine," Linda said. "I'm here because I never pass up free legal research in the wild." The Hotel Rahab greeted them with warm light and a small tower of cupcakes arranged like a geological formation. In the lobby, a man in a tuxedo handed out programs with a flourish that said he had taken one improv class. The ballroom was all cream and gold, as if a wedding cake had decided to grow up and get a job. People drifted, carrying flutes of something that bragged quietly. A string quartet made songs everyone recognized feel like they had diplomas. Brantley adjusted his tie and felt himself rise to his full height of reasonableness. Heads turned. He thought, They're noticing. He imagined a wave of whispers. He imagined Brantley Cornell arrives with Linda Wagner and makes a statement with his presence alone. Imagine the audacity. He practiced his rueful smile, the one designed to imply he had endured but would not be broken. They made a lap. Linda greeted a judge, two library donors, a woman who ran a bakery that sold tarts with names like Empowerment. She accepted a shrimp and inspected it like a diamond, then ate it with brisk approval. Brantley nodded at people who looked at him with the warm blankness you give to someone's cousin. He saw Madeleine across the room talking to a woman in fuchsia, laughing in a way that involved her shoulders. His chest tightened. Carson stood near the stage, conferring with a man holding a clipboard and radiating capable in emergencies. "Do we approach?" Brantley said, "or do we let them approach?" Linda said, "We do nothing." Nothing is the most powerful verb. They continued doing nothing in conspicuous places. At the silent auction tables, Brantley considered a weekend at a lake house with a hot tub that had seen some things and a framed jersey from a sport he did not follow but respected. Linda peered at the description of a wine tasting and said, "The phrase notes of stone fruit is actionable." He laughed, but he did not want to. A woman brushed by him and said, "There you are." It was Madeleine, cheeks flushed, eyes bright. The tangerine scent awakened into a more celebratory citrus. She looked at Linda, then at him, in a sequence that performed arithmetic. "What are you doing here?" she asked, not warmly. "And is this Carson's wife?" "Hi," Linda said, cordial like a curve. "I'm here for the shrimp." "We're here," Brantley said, choosing nobility, "to support Children's Horizons." Madeleine stared at him a full count of 4. "You are here to make a point." He opened his hands, a gesture he associated with TED Talks in innocence. "If there's a point," he said, "I didn't put it there." "Great," she said. "Then you'll love the next part." She glanced toward the stage. "Don't leave." Carson stepped up to the microphone then, the quartet landing on a polite cadence. The room settled. "Good evening," and he said, voice warm with practiced authenticity. "Thank you for supporting Children's Horizons, where we believe every kid should have what they need to read their own story. Tonight, we're doing a special thing. It's a fundraiser, yes, but we also want to honor someone who has been quietly orchestrating the kind of work that never trends." Brantley felt his ribs turn to corset. Linda dabbed at her mouth with a napkin like a scientist about to challenge the premise of gravity. "First," Carson continued, "a few instructions for the live auction. We've dimmed the house lights for the opening video. Keep your paddles ready. Afterward, please stay in the room. One more presentation will follow, off program. And Madeleine, don't run away." Madeleine, at Brantley's side, closed her eyes and breathed the way you breathe when the roller coaster clicks up the first hill. The lights went down. A video played, voiceover narrating short clips of children opening books, a school library being rearranged, volunteers hauling boxes, a teacher with a soft, determined jawline explaining how kids changed when stories arrived. Madeleine appeared twice, briefly, back turned, hair tucked under a baseball cap, taping labels on cartons, laughing as a cartwheel squealed. Brantley's throat tightened with something he didn't have a word for because he had come here with a different dictionary. The lights returned, a small burst of applause, a cluster of sniffles. The live auction started. Carson was deft at making people bid against their better angels. A man in a plaid bow tie bought a chef's dinner. A woman with bangles got into a duel over a sculpture that looked like an argument you could display in your foyer. Brantley did not move, mind ringing. Linda ate another shrimp and said quietly, "Maybe hold your tableau." When the auction ended, Carson lifted a hand. "Thank you." And now, the off-program moment. 2 years ago, one of our board members came to me with an idea. She said, "What if the gala wasn't about selfies with donors? What if we use the attention to shine it on the people who do the not glamorous parts? The parts that make light actually show up in the room." So she and I started plotting surprises. Tonight is a big one. Madeleine put a hand on Brantley's sleeve, not to hold, but to anchor herself. "Madeleine Canell," Carson said, "you didn't want this. You said no 3 times. You said you wanted to keep your work quiet because noise scares off the people who need help most. But you also ensured the lights were dimmed because there is a little girl named Alaya who has sensory sensitivities. and her mom is bringing her here tonight to watch the slideshow. You've been arranging rides and food for that family for months, and you didn't want Alaya overwhelmed. A spotlight found Madeleine gently. She looked like someone caught mid-prayer. The audience turned as if choreographed. A small girl on the side of the room lifted her hands and clapped, delighted. Carson beckoned. "Please come up," he said. "I have something for you." Madeleine didn't move. Brantley stepped with her. Linda followed as if she had always been part of this family. On stage, Carson pulled a small box from the lectern. He opened it to reveal a bow tie, black satin, nestled in white tissue, and a silver card that read, "For later, when we auction you off." He grinned. For those who don't know, Madeleine has been unreasonably good at getting people to donate while pretending she's bad at being noticed. So tonight, in addition to honoring her, we are going to auction off the privilege of having her bully your company into stocking 3 school libraries. And before anyone worries, auction off is metaphorical. Legal said I had to add that. The room clapped, then laughed, then clapped again the way rooms do when they feel safe enough to be generous. Brantley stared at the bow tie like it was a relic from a religion he had left. His mind tried to reconcile all the evidence he had curated in the story it had made for him. His stomach aired a grievance. His cheeks performed a sunrise. Carson leaned toward the microphone. Also, since we're all friends here, there's been some, let's say, interpretation about texts today. My wife, Linda, has been reading them to me in tones. The audience laughed. For the record, the bow tie was a prop for this joke. The "can't wait to see you tonight" was about a surprise we're going to announce after this. And "make sure the lights are dimmed before she arrives" is about Alea. We dim lights for kids who need dim lights. The only thing scandalous happening in this building is how good the shrimp is. Linda lifted a hand from the floor and gave a queenly wave. "It's true," she said, not on microphone, yet somehow audible. Carson closed the box and handed it to Madeleine. "Thank you for all you do, Madeleine." Then with a nod at Brantley, he walked away. Brantley nodded, then nodded again, as if he could nod himself into the correct dimension. "I'm sorry," he said to her, to the room, to the string quartet, to the hotel carpeting that had been so patient with his shoes. Linda stepped closer and murmured, "We could still do a tableau, but it would be devotional." The next minutes passed as a montage. People hugged. Madeleine made a short, embarrassed but satisfied speech expressing that the work wasn't hers alone. Carson presented her with a framed certificate that was beautifully designed and terribly earnest. The little girl waved at the lights, brave and shy, in alternating currents. The quartet slid into a pop ballad and turned it into something with posture. Brantley stood to the side, felt himself melt, and then set in a new shape. When the program ended, the gossip molecules in the air reorganized into a different conversation. People came to congratulate. A woman told Madeleine a story about a neighbor who'd learned to read at 62. Another said she had a nephew who faints under fluorescence. A city councilman shook Brantley's hand and said, "You married up," a sentence that used to sting and now simply felt like elevation. At the edge of the ballroom, next to an ice sculpture that resembled a drowsy swan considering a law school, Linda regarded him with an expression that recalled the word unflappable and then corrected it to unflusterable. "Thank you for coming," Brantley said. "I came for the shrimp," she said, and stayed for the jurisprudence of apology. "I misread," he said. "You read an early draft," she said. "Next time, wait for the published edition." He found Boone in his mind then, the dog on his rug, eyes bright and electric as he surveilled the hallway, patient as a seasoned operative. He could picture Boone regarding this whole evening with a quiet appraisal, as if to say, "Not every flicker is a fire, pal." Madeleine found him and took his hand. The contact had always felt ordinary until now, when it felt like the point of a compass. "You could have asked," she said, not unkindly. "You could have asked, and I would have told you. I might have teased you for a few minutes first." "I told myself I would not be the cliché," he said. "I have seen the shows. I should have known better." "You're not a cliché," she said. "You're a man who got scared and then picked the most theatrical possible way to deal with it. For what it's worth, you pulled it off with unusual poise." "I brought his wife," he said. "You did," she said, "and she appears to be unkillable." Linda joined them. I'm very killable, she said. I'm just well insured. They ended the night not early and not late. Outside, the city felt like a stage after the curtain, scaffolding exposed, air looser and honest. Linda's rideshare arrived first. She slid in and rolled down the window. For the record, she said, if my husband ever sends anyone a bow tie with the words "for later" again, I will file a motion. Carson's voice floated from the hotel doors. Duly noted, counselor. On the ride home, Madeleine rested her head on Brantley's shoulder. The driver had a podcast playing about extremely unfair custody disputes. Brantley listened as if it were weather. I did plan something, he said when they were in their building's elevator. The good one that didn't sulk on Fridays. I wanted to do a small dinner at Le Pomeroy. I was going to ask if you'd like to dance, even though I dance like a responsible forklift. I booked the back room because the lights there are kind even when the food is honest. That sounds perfect, she said. We can still do it. Tuesday exists every week. In the apartment, Boone rose with the silent economy of a man in a tux adjusting his cufflinks. He came to them and leaned his weight against Brantley's leg like a decree. Brantley scratched his ears, then knelt and put his forehead to Boone's head. The dog accepted the gesture with the weary tolerance of a professional who had seen this all before. If he had words, he did not use them. He watched with the unwavering focus of the shadowy specialist who keeps households safe from phantoms. Madeleine set the framed certificate on the table and took off her shoes with the sigh of a release valve. One more thing, she said. The silver card. The what? She opened her clutch, took out the little card that had sat with the bow tie, and handed it to him. The words read, "For later, when you apologize, we'll laugh about this at 30, 40, 50. Carson wrote that, she said. I told him it was sappy. He said sap is what lets the tree grow another ring. He groaned, a sound full of acceptance. I bought the wine pairing at the auction, he confessed. I thought it would be, I don't know what I thought. I thought you'd do something like that, she said, smiling. We'll use it for the dinner. Unless you also bought the sculpture. I did not, he said, but I did sign us up for a forest bathing experience. I'll bring bug spray, she said. They brushed their teeth next to each other, the domestic choreography that can feel like eternity or grace depending on the night. He spat, rinsed, and said, why didn't you tell me about the surprise? I mean, the honoring, the auctioning of my wife. I wanted to see your face, she said, fluffing her pillow. You do a thing with your eyebrows where they apologize before your mouth does. He lay in the dark and listened to the building hum. Can we have a rule, he said. We can have 5, she said, but start with 1. If I see something that looks like a pattern, he said, I will ask you what it is instead of naming it myself. And I, she said, will remember you have a mind that loves puzzles and hates ambiguity. I will tell you when I am dimming lights for small children. Deal, he said. Also, I'm sorry. I know, she said. I accept. They were quiet. Boone settled on his rug, the little huff he made exactly once before sleep. A car passed outside, sending a square of light across the ceiling like a slow card trick. In the morning, he would text Linda a thank you for lending him her unflappability. He would text Carson a reluctant appreciation for his stagecraft. He would plan a dinner on a Tuesday that actually existed. He would stop narrating doom with such confident punctuation. At 2:30, he woke to the sound of the elevator briefly refusing the 3rd floor and smiled into his pillow. Patterns had not lied. He had misread the legend. It turns out that data can be a rumor if the storyteller is careless, and that the heart, despite its reputation, is an excellent fact-checker. He touched Madeleine's shoulder, felt her warm and uncompromised beside him, and let himself drift back into a night that, now that he'd looked properly, had nothing in it to fear. And that was the last time Brantley trusted text messages over conversations. Original, heartwarming fiction every week. Subscribe for your next great story.